Hello everyone, Matsu here. Before I start the video, I just want to say thank you. One, for the views. I've never had over 1.2k views on a video, so when my first Pso2 video hit 4k in less than a day, that really made me happy. And the comments, it was a lot, but it was a great feeling having so many questions and interacting with everyone who was in the comments section. While assisting y'all in your questions, I learned some new things and gained more information that I didn't know through reading some responses. I couldn't answer, but someone else would answer for me, so thanks for that. And last but not least, the subscribers. I hit 700 today, and I gained about 60 in 2 days, which is a big thing to me as well. So thanks again for that. I hope I can keep making more videos for you to watch and enjoy. So as promised, here's a Talus guide video. Taluses are a ranged force/Techer weapon that may seem underwhelming based off its previous model on base Pso2. I think the Taluses definitely deserve some praise now, and I strongly believe Taluses might be the strongest mage weapon out of the wand/rod. Given the current skill tree right now, when we get more skills, it'll only further improve what Taluses can do, and they already are pretty fucking hype as it is now, compared to what they were before. Plus, they're a lot more mobile and evasive, so that's also good. Don't base the mobility off my gameplay, because I get hit a lot and I forget to hit the dodge button. So, anyways, here's what I think Taluses are pog. The Talus has a unique flow to it that I say is completely different from all the other weapons in the game. The Talus basic attack is completely different from what we know back in Pso2, but the Talus also comes with stances, or that's what I call them. So the first stance is called the ST stance, or the single target stance, which fires a fast projectile beam at your enemy. I recommend using it against a boss when their weak point is open or when they're just standing still for the most part. The second stance is the 3-line stance, which initially is a close range attack. Make sure to jump, dash, or use a photon art, or you'll stay in this stance. I use this stance the most as it's easiest for guarantee hitting a boss or a mob if they move around a lot. The third stance is the Aoe stance, which initially is a close ranged attack like the 3-line stance, but after a second or two it gives off another ranged attack which puts you in the Aoe stance. This is by far the best for mobbing, especially in comparison to uncharged regular photon arts. It just beats it in every way, DPS or cast time, by a lot. So the Aoe stance is pretty pog, especially when you're in a big group of enemies. I say this stance does more damage than the uncharged photon art because you can cast it a whole lot faster than the regular photon art. Next up we have Tricky Capacitor, which is an active ability in the skill tree that throws cards in a straight line. I recommend grabbing this simply because it's an active, just like your photon burst. It gives mana back, PP, when you use it, but it fills up so fast when you're mobbing with the Aoe stance. It also gives iframes. PS, you can miss this skill, so it's best to use when they're stationary or down. Alright, this next one is probably the most important passive that you get from Talisman, and it's on the skill tree. It's called the Talus Bloom Revoke. It's a passive that allows you to revert back to your uncharged photon art rather than using the Talus version of your photon arts. In case you want to proc Zodon Clad or Barterblot, or just spam regular photon arts. I do this every so often to proc Barterblot or just spam regular photon arts. It honestly depends on the elemental weakness that the monster is showing. So why is this the most important passive? It's simply because you need this to maximize your damage, and it makes sense to why the stances have such a limit in damage but comes out so fast. They don't want you to stay in the stances the whole time, which makes sense. So in this scene, we down the boss, and instead of hitting 200s per cast on the single target stance, I cast uncharged Zondes and landed 500s. Once the boss is back up, you switch back to your stance to spam and maximize your damage with rapid casts rather than slow casts from your photon arts, if that makes sense. The last passive, which is also an active, is the floating multi something. I don't really care what it's called because it sounds dumb, but the weapon action. It reminds me of E from L Sword. who I love. It also allows your talisman to attack up to 3 targets instead of 1 if you don't press a directional key when you deploy it. So when you press the button, the action button, don't move for a short second. If you do move, you'll just summon a single talisman to attack for you. If you do have a single talisman, it focuses on the mob that you're attacking or just aims in the direction of where your character is looking, not your camera, your character. P.S. The triple talisman does not attack unless there are mobs around, while the single target talisman does attack regardless. P.S.S. The talisman attack grants you 3 to 6 PP per hit. In comparison to the original skills, you can definitely use both uncharged photon arts or the stances, but to show the difference in speed and PP consumption, here are some original videos and also side-by-side videos so you can see the amount you can spam compared to the other, and also to understand the efficiency in the situation rather than only looking at the DPS aspect of the game. But still, you want to use the stances to maximize your damage, be evasive, and also manage your PP consumption better until they are downed/broken, or a weak point is open. DPS is still DPS, so at the end of the day, if it's dead, who cares? But I still recommend uncharged when the boss is downed or broken. So, uncharged skills have 1. Slower cast time / slower spells overall. 2. Higher damage when enemies are downed / broken. 3. Higher PP consumption, while Talis Stance have 1. Faster cast times / faster spells overall. 2. Less damage when enemies are downed / broken. And 3. Less PP consumption. So they both have their pros and cons, but in the end, if you put them together, they complement each other as long as you manage them correctly. So now we made it to the pros and cons of the video. So the pros are: 1, it's a lot better than what it was in Pso2. 2, it's very versatile in terms of attacks. 3, it has very fast attacks. If done correctly, you could have top DPS and keep aggro on the boss. 4, you have 2 special active iframes, your photon burst and tricky capacitor. 5, you have very small Eve. And 6, you're more mobile than base Pso2 Talus. The cons, not a damn thing. But for real though, the cons: 1, each stance seems to pump out around the same amount of DPS no matter what the potency of the skill is when you're not hitting a weak spot or critical. I think that sucks, but it makes up for it in speed. It will be pretty broken if it has strong potency and speed like every other class. 2, you have to switch out with your stances to maximize your damage on downed / broken bosses. 3, the 3-line strike stance could hit 3 times, but it only hits once, which is dumb. And 4, your DPS falls off if you can't alternate in between your stances and your non-stances. Now we get to the mob potential or mobbing potential compared to Rod and Wand. I'd say Wand is good if you have Wand lovers on so you don't get staggered. It could rival Talus in mobbing, but as far as Rod goes, I'd say it comes in 3rd place in terms of mobbing for the basic attack not exploding like Wand does, and also slower AoE spells. While the Wand does have slower AoEs, it also makes up for it in mobbing with its explosive basic attack and Wand lover's passive, allowing you to not be flinched. I still say Talus AoE stance wins because the range that it hits is a lot farther than the explosive auto attack that the Wand provides, but if they aren't grouped or as grouped, it's an issue for your auto attacks, making you default to uncharged photon arts. So Talus just has better potential having AoE stance plus uncharged photon arts plus the triple talisman pillbox, giving you more PP to spam AoE stance even more. So in my opinion, in order from the best to the worst, it would be Talus, Wand, and then Rod when it comes to mobbing. After all this talk about uncharged stances, and everything else, you're probably wondering, where the heck is charged photon arts? Where do they come in? Well, right now. I wanted to break it down in portions so then at the end I can conclude what is the best route to go for the 3 options. This will actually be a lot quicker. So in terms of mobbing, use Aoe Stance. In terms of down/broken bosses, use charged photon arts or uncharged photon arts. And in terms of getting the boss to get or become downed/broken, use the stances. In terms of one-on-one versus mini bosses, I'd recommend using single target stance. I will also say in terms of element, all lightning charged photon arts are better than uncharged photon arts, but you should definitely be using just Zonde only. All fire charged photon arts are better than uncharged photon arts, and Barta ice charged photon art is better than uncharged photon arts, and G-Barta uncharged is better than charged G-Barta. Also, here's another side-by-side clip of me using uncharged and charged Zonde to see which one is more efficient. As you can see, it's a whole lot better to use charged than uncharged, especially when using Zonde, so make sure you use it on the urgent quest when downed and broken. For the last section of this video, it is about the multi-weapon options for Talus. What complements it the best to me, not anyone else, to me. So after all this, you think Talus wouldn't need any help, but of course they still do. So I recommend the gunner twin machine guns. Again, I know y'all like, this guy always uses twin machine guns. But anyways, for quicker auto attacks rather than using your Talus auto attacks, which is, still decent, but, machine guns are just a lot faster. And they gain PP a whole lot better. I honestly don't care too much for any other option, as you're ranged, and using a melee weapon would be an interesting choice. I wouldn't recommend it. If I absolutely had to choose one though, I would say daggers, because their auto attacks are godly fast. And if you aren't running force or tech or force with PP conversion, that would help you out a lot when they're downed. So my suggestions are Talus plus twin machine guns, which will give you max DPS because the auto attacks are really fast, so you'll be able to spam quicker once your gauge fills all the way up. So it gives you the greatest spam potential also, and also the highest chance of keeping the boss aggro if you want it to aggro. If you don't, then you don't want it, because it honestly keeps you from doing DPS because they just blast you all day. I like having aggro because it means that I'm doing the most damage and the boss clearly wants to kill me. It's quite an honor. Now I know that was a lot. I would know. I typed all this before I actually said all of it, but this is all I got from Talus or Taluses that I discovered so far. I'm sure there is more, or much more, especially when we get an extended skill tree for talismans or just force/techer in general. But as for now, that's it. Anything I forgot or remember, I will pin it in the comment section of the video. If anyone needs a video over it, I'll post that as well. Thank you for watching this far. If you did, I enjoyed making a video about my favorite weapon in the game at the moment, so I hope you try out Talus for yourself if you haven't already, and have a good day.